Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top nonprofit galas and signature fundraising events to showcase how they positively transform their communities. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I have a trio of very special guests on. So we have Kelly Kopecky and Rachel Pry, who are the co-chairs of an upcoming event for CASA of Travis County called CASABlanca Cheers to 40 Years, as well as Erin Kozma, who is the Senior Director of Development for CASA of Travis County. And Cheers to 40 Years and CASA of Travis County is one of the top, children's-oriented nonprofit organizations within the Austin area. And, 40 years of an organization is really a big landmark, especially in a growing city like this one. So I thought this would be the perfect time to have these trio of guests on to talk about this event that always raises, well over $1 million every year. And with that, Erin, Kelly, Rachel, welcome. And I'm so excited to have all three of you here as guests today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I'm going to direct the first question to Erin. Erin, can you talk a little bit about what the mission of CASA of Travis County is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rob. So CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and we promote and protect the best interest of children who've experienced abuse or neglect in our community by empowering community volunteers to speak up for their safety, well-being, and opportunities to thrive. So what this really looks like is we encourage members of our community to get involved in our work. They get to know the kids that we serve, their families, their care providers, and the like. Then they go to court, to the schools, and into the community and make sure these children's best interests are being heard while they're going through one of the most difficult times of their lives, oftentimes while they're going through foster care or specifically the child welfare system.
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, the CASA appointees, they're pretty much all volunteers, correct? Which I think is just such a remarkable thing about the power of your organization.
Yeah, all of our advocates are volunteer, and so right now we have about 600 advocates a year serving about 1,000 children here in Travis County. So it's incredible work. I always say our volunteers are just incredibly special people, and are so powerful to lend their voice to these kids that we're serving.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to bring that point up because I think that that is really just the power of your organization, just how amazing that it is that so many people really give their time and, devote a substantial amount of time into really helping, a child out who really, really needs it. And, it is a special organization. And I always, it's always, I think, important to understand how and why people get involved in organizations because everyone has a different reason for getting involved with an organization. So I would love for Rachel to answer first. Share a little bit about how you initially got involved with CASA.
Yeah, so I got involved with CASA's work through my membership in the Junior League of Austin, which is another community volunteer-driven women's organization. And CASA's been a longtime community partner of the Junior League. And so throughout my years of service with the league, I became familiar with their work and really had the opportunity to get more involved as my friends started volunteering with CASABlanca.
Oh, fantastic. So you got involved with the organization through, it sounds like in a big way, the gala, which is actually really cool. And I can't wait to dive into it a little bit more with you. And then Kelly, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you've gotten involved with the organization.
So I've been going to Casablanca, gosh, probably for the last at least 10 years. My dad got involved through a friend in Dallas. And then both my brother and sister are actually Casa volunteers. And so I would go to the Casablanca and be really excited but I couldn't really make the time to be a volunteer. I have two or three very young kids right now. So a couple years ago when Carrie Walling, who I'm pretty sure Rachel got involved with through, reached out to me asking if I want to be on the committee, and I thought that was a perfect chance to finally help serve.
That's fantastic. And what I appreciate about that answer is you're getting involved in a way that works for you and your life. And that's the thing when people do chair and they're on committees is, It's always good to have new ideas with an event. So if you're not involved every single year, it's actually okay. It's good to have a breather because when you come back, you actually come back with more, with more energy. And Erin, I'd love to hear how, you found your way to CASA of Travis County.
Yeah, my history with CASA is a long one. My mother is actually, or used to be, the judge here in Travis County that appointed CASA volunteers to cases. She oversaw the child welfare docket for, I believe, about 15 years. So I was introduced to CASA when I was about 10 years old, and grew up watching my mom work with this organization, do this incredible work. And it really instilled this deep passion for the work that we do, and allowed me to see the importance of it. And so I was really honored when I got out of um, school that I had an opportunity to start working here as the event manager. And I have now been with the organization on and off for about 10 years now. So um, both here in Austin and in Seattle.
That's fantastic. And I'm glad you mentioned the word passion because passion is really what makes a nonprofit successful and channeling it, really in the right way. And I'd love to hear from each of you, and we'll start with Erin. But, talk a little bit about what makes you passionate about this particular organization, because there's a lot of really good children's organizations in Austin. What about CASA makes you so passionate?
You know, when I, it was probably once I was in college that I got to go to my mother's courtroom and watch CASA volunteers in action, speaking for the kids that were going through the child welfare system. And having this person who um, is giving of their time, who has an incredibly busy life, um, choose to spend their time to advocate for a child who has experienced something beyond most of our imaginations is um, just such an incredible thing for a human to do for another human. When I grew up, my mother always said that you can always um, make more money. You can always get more things, but the one thing that you can give of yourself that you can never, ever get back is your time. And the fact that our volunteers, both our advocates and honestly our gala committee, chooses to take time away from their families, away from their busy lives, and give back to the community in this way, that is what makes me so passionate about our work. Is watching others' passion for our work. It just puts a fire in me and makes me want to make this community a better place.
It's almost like that passion's contagious is almost kind of, what I'm hearing when you see other people be so passionate, especially when they're giving their time, which is probably the most valuable asset any of us has. I think that's amazing. And Rachel, I'm really most interested in your take just because you got involved through another organization. So what made you say, in speaking of time, what made you say, yes, the passion of this organization, I'm going to devote my time to?
I think for me, it's when I think about the needs of children, they run so wide in our community. And I think children who are involved in the child welfare system are some of the most vulnerable children in our community. And so being able to contribute my time, resources, connections to amplifying their needs and amplifying the opportunity for volunteers to engage in a place where they'll have such a meaningful impact really speaks to me. So, just kind of having my own children and raising my own family, I know the struggles of how hard it can be when you have all the resources available to you. And so that leads me to be so compassionate to other families and the situations they're in. And I think CASA's like kind of wraparound services that they offer, not just through their volunteer advocates, but also the connections those advocates have to other organizations to make connections for children, I just think has a lasting impact on their lives.
It absolutely does. Very well said. And Kelly, I'd love to hear, I want to hear where your passion comes from that, as a busy parent, that you keep coming back to the organization when you have time. It's like it is the first organization that it seems like you want to come back and get involved with. So where does your passion for this organization come from?
I mean, I definitely think it stems from the kids. It definitely made it a little bit more, gave me a little bit more fire once I had my own kids. I feel so blessed to have grown up in two-parent home with loving parents that never put me in a tough situation. And it's really, it's really hard. These kids don't have a choice. And, and what's really cool about CASA is, it doesn't just stop at the courthouse. I know a lot of these kids, they only have a CASA as the most consistent person in their life. And it's just a really amazing. I don't know, it's just such a cool organization. There's not a ton of places that, advocate just for the kids' best interest, including in the court. And Rachel and I got to go to court, and it was really cool to see those CASAs work their magic there.
That's amazing. I love how each of you got, you each have equal passion, but the passion comes from different sources and different reasons. And that, it's no wonder that this organization has thrived for 40 years with passion from people like you. And Erin, I'd love to direct this next question to you. Talk a little bit about how the organization has evolved over the last 4 decades.
I mean, that's such a big question. I mean, you think about how much our community itself has evolved over the last 4 decades. Someone once asked me what it's like to work in the community in which I was raised, and I would say this isn't necessarily the community that I was raised in because it's just so different now. But, to illustrate that a little bit, CASA of Travis County was founded in 1985. Our very first year of existence, we had 43 volunteers advocating for 85 children. And we spent a significant portion of our history trying to work towards being able to serve 100% of children coming into the child welfare system here in Travis County. And a few years ago, we were able to achieve that goal. And while that is an incredibly momentous occasion, our work by no means is done. There are new children coming into the system every single week, every month, and this work is far from being over. Um, in, in the past, I mean, decade and a half, we here in Travis County are really fortunate to have a board and a leadership team that really embraces new ideas and innovation. And because of that, we've established some programs that provide wraparound services that are looked at by other CASA programs across the country and are being implemented around the country. Some of those programs are our family finding program, where we have a team of staff and volunteers who identify extended family members to create supports around these kids and these families who are going through this system. Most recently, we've established our Bridge to Permanency program that provides small funding to families that allows us to stabilize a child's placement so that they don't experience more trauma being removed from potentially a family member's home who maybe can't pay their electric bill that month or the like. It's to allow them to have some consistency in their lives while they're experiencing the child welfare system. So I think we're doing some amazing things here in Travis County, and I am really excited to see where, the next 40 years brings us and the work that we can do and the supports we can provide to the kids and the families that we serve.
Very well said. And, you had mentioned there at the end there about 40 years. And, one of the things that you all do is, and you've had this gala for many years, and it's one of the very, very best galas in Austin that I go to each year and that I've experienced. So, one of the key elements to success is, strategic and long-term planning for a gala. And I definitely want to start with the co-chairs with this one. So Kelly, I'd love for you to go first, and then Rachel, you can follow. But talk about the importance of long-term planning from your perspective to create a successful gala.
Oh gosh, I think we've been planning, I think our first meeting was probably back in April. And I mean, I can't say enough amazing things about CASA. I've been on event planning committees in the past, and just like the staff really walks you through. But I don't want to speak for Rachel, but I really felt like, they gave us the tools, but we were able to, we like this and we like that, and we think this is important. They really listened to us as being attendees. I don't know. I mean, I think the cost of staff is just far superior than anyone else I've worked with. I can't say enough amazing things about them, but I mean, they know what they're doing and they really help us make the right decisions and push through, and we're great.
Yeah,
That
really guide our choices
Mhm.
with setting up our committee and subcommittees, and so that their knowledge about having a successful gala, I think, really helped us with the foundation, from the beginning of this planning year.
Well, that's fantastic. And you both mentioned committees. And, committees are really, I always like to say that, a great gal is like a tree because there's lots of different branches and the branches, can be the committees. Talk a little bit about how the committees make it easier for you all to do the work that you need to do as event chairs. And Rachel, why don't you continue, and then Kelly can finish with anything that she wants to add.
Yes, the committee is critical. So I think when Erin asked if I was interested in being the co-chair, my initial response was yes, but can I bring my friends, that network that we have of diverse people who share that passion for the organization and share that passion for connecting people in their orbit with the work of CASA is just critical to the success of the event. And I think Kelly and I both bring different diverse networks. And so I think they overlap in some ways they're different. So I think that really adds to the success of what we're building for in February for through our networks.
That's fantastic. And Kelly, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think we both kind of pulled in people that we thought would be actually two people are on our procurement who are close friends of ours, and they're just doing a really great job together. And I don't know, I think we didn't really have much crossover. We kind of, have both been able to hit different sides of the community to kind of hit a mass, and I think that's been great. And my guess is CASA had a lot to do with deciding who would be the co-chairs, and that we could bring different people in.
Well, I'm glad you both brought up different people because I think there's kind of this misconception that, the co-chairs need to have the same exact crowd and everyone needs to bring all those people in the door. And what I have always found successful events to have in common is it brings in a tapestry of the community. And that's basically what both of you have kind of described there is that you each have you have your reaches and you have your friends and you have your networks to different aspects of the community. And when you bring it all together, it really allows for an elevated, magical, and unique experience because you've got a lot of different energies in place. I just think that's really cool how you both described that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, Erin, I'd like for you to answer this next question. And this really is more about the relationship between the organization and the event chairs. And both Kelly and Rachel, alluded to the fact that you all really give them the tools to succeed. But talk a little bit about how you, from an organization perspective, the importance of having a good relationship with your event chairs to create a great event.
I mean, I think that relationship is critical, honestly, to the success of any event. We have to have a trust for one another, and that trust has to be established pretty rapidly. Oftentimes, your event planning year is that a year, maybe a little bit more, depending on whether or not you can determine your next year's chairs prior to the event itself. But while Kelly and Rachel have served on the committee in the past, developing a relationship with the organization as chairs, that's something that we build a lot really rapidly. And so, communication obviously is key. I know that that's just like maybe a little, duh, but I really feel like listening to both of your chairs, and starting to really quickly understand what's important to them when it comes to communication. Um, are they someone who likes to be over communicated with? Do they just kind of want to be left alone and do their thing, and you check in every once in a while and hearing that feedback. So I'm gonna not to like single out Rachel a little bit, but would always talk about like, hey, it would be really great if we had a group text for the subcommittees, and can I be in that group text? And so what I really started to realize with Rachel is she just doesn't necessarily, she's not gonna be the one to reply to the email, but having her CC'd on the email makes her feel comfortable and that she knows what's going on and that the ball is being progressed and being moved. So that's something that I really try to focus on when I'm communicating with our committee, is having both Kelly and Rachel CC'd just so that they're aware that things are happening, things are moving, things are progressing, because they want this event to be a success just as much as we do here at CASA as the staff. And they also can only help and step in if they are themselves in the loop. And it's created a really wonderful dynamic this year where I think we can kind of pick up the ball for one another. When we're here on staff focused on another event, because we're in the middle of an event week, Kelly and Rachel know what's going on with the gala to where they can kind of carry the ball for a couple weeks for the staff, and then the staff can come back in and we can resync and we can keep moving forward as a unit. And so just communicate, communicate, communicate. Over communication, I would recommend, and let your chairs let you know, like, okay, that's too much, you can back off. But I feel like to start, you can never communicate too much with your chairs.
That is really cool to hear. And what I appreciate about that is the chairs know they don't have to do. And that's the difference between leadership and micromanaging is, a good chair wants to be aware. They don't have to necessarily do everything, but if they know, then they can address. They don't have to do everything, but knowing allows them to step in when they do that. So I thought that was a really great answer. And sometimes, Erin, with communication in particular, it's the most obvious thing, but sometimes the most obvious things get overlooked. So I really appreciated that answer. Absolutely. So, one thing, Kelly and Rachel, you both mentioned that you kind of came up through the committee, and I want to talk a little bit about creating, devoted followings for an event, because I noticed that, a great event always has, the regulars and new people that come in every year. And I've always thought CASA's done a really good job with that, like with this year and you talking about each of you bringing in your own people. But I'd love for each of you, and Kelly, you can go first. What is one thing a person or an organization can do to create a devoted following for their annual gala?
Well, this is kind of like outside of the committee in general, but I think that especially with CASA is like a social media, like every time I post anything, I have like a flood of like people be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were doing that. And how do I get involved? I think I brought 3 people on just from posting the invitation last year, and knowing that they, 2 of them had been to the gala before, one just like moved back to Austin. And it's just, I think a lot of people aren't sure how to get involved. You want to, but you never like really make that initial push. So I think, talking about it with your friends and your community, and, inviting new members. And like last night, I texted my husband's coworker and he was like, "Oh my gosh, send the email to my whole entire family. They would love to be included." So I don't know. I think the message behind CASA does enough. I just think that having people that you know and close with makes you want to get involved, and then you want to stay involved. So I mean, I'm going on 3 years. I know Rachel's been on for a while too, and it's a pretty special place to stay.
That is a fantastic answer. And I love that shows the power of social media right there that you just posted, hey, I'm co-chairing with the invitation. And you got several other people to get involved. And the great thing is some of those people may only be involved because you're co-chairing it, Kelly, but others may stay involved. And we may be having a conversation for the 45th because they got involved through you this year. That's kind of
Yeah.
where that devoted following comes from. Rachel, from your point of view, what is something an organization can do to create that devoted following for their event?
I think sharing an impactful message is something that CASA is really great at their events. And then that just shows you the power behind your advocacy or your financial donations. And so I think at the event does a really great job of that. And then also just sharing within your network, always looking to give that opportunity for either a business or a person to become involved is really creating the chance for them to make that connection with the organization, which then adds so much to their lives to know that they're helping something so needed.
Absolutely. That's a great answer as well. And they're both equally important for different reasons. And it's no one specific thing necessarily, but think of the both of those answers for anyone listening as a place to start and utilize the one that works best for you. And those other opportunities will then kind of emerge from that to create that, devoted following. And I want to direct the next question to Erin and back to kind of the volunteer network that we had talked about earlier in the program. How does CASA utilize the volunteer network throughout the, CASABlanca events, whether it's last year or this year or any of the previous years, to compel their donors to give more? Because, providing the resources for 600 people, even though they're not paid, there's still a substantial amount of resources that's required for them to do the work that they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every volunteer we have has a supervisor that sits on our staff. And because of the complexity of the work that we do, we really try to keep our volunteer to staff ratio pretty low to provide our volunteers with the resources that they need. So absolutely, although our advocates are volunteers, there are a lot of resources that need to be put in place to ensure that they are successful. So how do we look at kind of deploying our resources with the committee? I think it goes back honestly and ties in nicely to your question about long-term planning for the gala and our committee structure and building in these two separate networks. We at CASA have been on a co-chair model for about 6 years now, and it seems to be working relatively well. Not only do we have event co-chairs, but we have 3 subcommittees. Each subcommittee has their own co-chairs. And when we're looking at those placing folks in those co-chair positions for the subcommittees, it's oftentimes because we're looking at them for future full gala chair potential. And so building a pipeline in your committee, I think, is really, really important and ensures the longevity of the event. If your committee stays the same every year, you're going to stagnate. You're going to tap that network's resources to the point where your event will probably become unsustainable at some point. So building in that pipeline, I would say, is really critical for long-term success. And then looking at the diversity of networks that your committee brings to bear. And so these two women have, as they've talked about, come from very different networks here in the Austin community. And that's something that we really try to look at when we're selecting our 2 chairs, along with their leadership abilities and their ability to communicate their own passion for the work. We, try to do a lot of talking in our general committee meetings about how to make an ask. We put in a lot of resources for our committee from an infrastructure perspective so that everybody can track what asks they are making so that we ensure we're not, looking uncoordinated and we have 5 committee members going to the same business asking for different things. So I don't know if I answered your question around that, but I would say training infrastructure, pipeline, and diversity of networks are four really important things when looking at encouraging the community to get involved.
You absolutely did. And not only that, I'm so glad you brought up the pipeline, because the thing is that some organizations will get a little eager and they'll ask someone to chair the first year. And that may not be the best way to get someone involved. And, I'm not a person who believes no forever unless they say no and never call me again. No may mean no, not, just not right now, and especially, Rachel and Kelly have both mentioned they have young children. There's ebbs and flows to life. So someone may not be able to put in all the hours to be a chair, but they could serve on the corporate sponsor committee or the auction committee or whatever it is. That may not be as much time. So that pipeline is really, really important. So I'm glad that you really brought that up. And now we're at a pipeline that I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be able to experience at this year's gala. Because 40 years, that's quite the celebration. So I love, for each of you. And Rachel, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about what guests can expect at this year's CASABlanca Cheers to 40 Years Gala.
Well, it's going to be a memorable night. We're celebrating 40 years, so that's a really big deal for CASA. So of course, we're going to really focus on the mission and really connect attendees with the mission's work, and then we'll have games, raffles. Our committee is working so hard to put together an amazing auction package from our silent to our live auction. So many great things that people can bid on: trips to Telluride, dinner with Red Ash owner John Carver. It's just there's going to be so many great things. So it will be celebratory and community building, all the things that make an event really spectacular. I think we're going to be able to hit with this year's Cheers to 40 Years.
That's fantastic. And Kelly, do you have anything you want to add that you might be looking forward to?
It is, even before I was on the committee, it's my favorite night of the year. It's so much fun. Not only does it go to such an incredible organization, but you get to start off not doing the mystery bags, which is so fun. Then raffles and games, and get to see such an amazing message. And then if you haven't been there and seen Paddles Up, it's pretty intoxicating seeing how many people get excited, and you're like, oh my gosh, that person's donating that. But it's a really special night. And the after party is super fun. Just the whole night is the best.
Fantastic. So it goes from cocktails to after party. And I've done the whole gamut at various points over the years, and they always are a lot of fun. And Erin, I want to, from your perspective, what are things that the organization is going to do throughout the program to give nod to the 40 years during the night that guests could expect to see?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really powerful about CASA is just the stories that we're able to tell of the families that we've served throughout the 40 years. I'm really, really excited about the story that we are looking at for our mission video this year. It talks about a story that started with CASA's origin, with CASA of Travis County's origin, centers on a woman and her volunteer, and their story is still going 40 years later. And so it's, I think, going to be a really powerful moment to look at the impact that CASA has been able to have over these 40 years, and be in community. While we hear about the incredible work that these volunteer advocates do for the kids of our community.
That is so cool. And it's so cool that you have someone that was involved in the beginning that's still involved, that can kind of talk about that evolution of the organization. I just think that's really, that warms my heart to hear that. And it just goes to show the wonderful wide-ranging impact, that your organization has. And I know we're coming up on time, but I always like to end with this one question. And feel free to just give a single word answer. If you have the same answer, that's okay. And that is, what is one thing all successful events have in common? And we'll start with Erin, and then Kelly, and then Rachel.
Passion.
Passion. Great answer. And Kelly?
Oh man, that is a good answer.
Do you want to take that answer as well?
I really do, actually. Passion, community, I think is super important.
Absolutely. Community is extremely important. And a great event I always like to say is a great tapestry of an individual community. And I think that's a great answer. And then Rachel, what about you? You have the last word.
Oh, I'd just say advocacy, elevating those needs of the children that the program is serving.
Perfect mic drop answer. And this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed chatting with you. You all really, I admire the work you all do so much and just the extensive wide network that you all have throughout this community. So thank you so much for joining us today and congratulations on 40 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the Casablanca Cheers to 40 Years will be held on February 8th, 2025 at the JW Marriott in Austin, Texas. For more information, please visit casatravis.org. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.